familiar faces out there. What face parts of it I can see.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center here in Florida. I'm Megan Cruz with NASA Communications, and you're here watching the crew and science briefing for tomorrow's OFT-2 launch, targeted for 2:53 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now, OFT-2 is Boeing's second uncrewed test flight of its Starliner capsule atop a ULA Atlas V rocket. NASA, Boeing, and ULA are targeting a launch later this year for the first crewed flight. And speaking of the crew, we have them here today along with some other familiar faces, I'm sure. First, we have Chris Ferguson, Director of Starliner Mission Operations and Integration Cruise Systems. And then we have the crew again, as I was saying. We have Commander Butch Wilmore, Pilot Mike Fink, and Mission Specialist Nicole Mann. And then we have Jennifer Buckley, who's the Deputy Chief Scientist of NASA's International Space Station Program. Now, each will deliver some opening remarks, and then we'll take your questions. So why don't you take it away, Chris?
Thanks, Megan. Well, good morning. This is a great day. Anytime we get ready to launch a rocket into space is an awesome day. For those of you who did not have the privilege of watching the Atlas V roll out of the vertical integration facility and over to the pad, it completed about an hour ago. So it's sitting out there and ready for what we hope will be weather-dependent on-time launch tomorrow. This has been it's been a long time preparing for this flight. We have taken an awful lot of effort to basically scrutinize every aspect of the Starliner's flight software. We have done mission end-to-end verification tests. We have added an enormous amount of test scripting to the way that we manage our flight software. We have made upgrades to our communication system, all in preparation for what will ultimately be this crew's trip to space. So we're very proud to be, of course, a part of the commercial crew program. We're very proud to be conducting our second flight, and we will be equally proud when we launch the awesome CFT crew here later this year. So it's going to be a great day. We again are looking for an on-time launch tomorrow with a docking less than 24 hours later, and then a landing on or about August 5th at one of our western landing sites. We have already deployed our landing teams out there, and they're ready to receive the Starliner upon return. With that, I would like to introduce Butch Barry Wilmore, a good friend. We've known each other a very long time. I am intimately familiar with this crew, as many of you I think are well aware, but Butch, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Chris, and good morning. And what an exciting time. Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral launched a lot of spacecraft into space, obviously, but this is human spaceflight, and that's what makes this really special, obviously, for us. We are a bit jealous, I will admit, that we have a rocket that is launching in human spaceflight without a crew on it, but that's a necessary thing. Obviously, when we have to test, we need to make sure systems are ready and ready to go. And just a little bit about human spaceflight, I thought I'd share very briefly. I launched on STS-129 on the Space Shuttle in 2009. And when you go to the pad, there's no one there because the spacecraft is fueled. It's a little bit of a dangerous environment, so the crew has to obviously get there. So it's the crew and the bus driver, right? And we get out, you go walk over. We walked over to the Space Shuttle Atlantis, and we looked up, and there, that American flag on the side of the Space Shuttle. It was, without question, the proudest moment of my professional career, because it encompassed a nation coming together to do great things. That's what that flag represented on the side of that space shuttle. And it's the same thing with Starliner. We'll go to the pad eventually, and we will walk up to that pad. It'll be fueled and ready to go, us and the bus driver, and we'll look up and we'll see that American flag, and it's going to mean the exact same thing. We look forward to that day. It will get here eventually, but right now, obviously, the focus is OFT-2, and we're excited about what's coming in the next week. And so with that, that's all I have to say. I'll hand it over to our Joint Operations Commander, Mike Fink.
Yeah, good morning. you heard it. We are excited. We're excited for Orbital Flight Test, right? So that's what we're in the flight test phase of getting a capability to the International Space Station. After Orbital Flight Test comes Crew Flight Test, and then regularly scheduled programs. And what it really does, and what it really helps, it gives us NASA the ability to go to the International Space Station, have 4 people getting a lot of fantastic science done aboard the space station. So OFT-2 is paving the way, and we're excited. We're looking for our flight coming soon. And with that, our pilot, the Joint Ops Commander, she's the pilot, Nicole Mann, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps.
Thank you, Spanky. Let's talk about this a little bit in the big picture of things. This is an exciting moment for OFT-2 and for the NASA Boeing team, but this is also part of Commercial Crew Program and Launch America. We've already returned capabilities to launch humans from American soil, and now we're continuing that effort with these 2 dissimilar companies that will have spacecraft taking astronauts to the International Space Station. This is paving the way for our larger strategic goal of putting people beyond low Earth orbit. We'll partner with commercial industry, with our international partners, to the moon as part of the Artemis program, and eventually to Mars. So it's a very exciting time as we see the commercialization beginning of low Earth orbit and exploration beyond. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer Buckley, who's been with NASA for over 15 years and is our Deputy Chief Scientist for the International Space Station.
Thank you, Nicole. It's my pleasure to be here today to talk about the Commercial Crew Program and how it enables research on ISS. So to date, we've done over 3,000 experiments on the International Space Station, and the research community is very much looking forward to bringing on another commercial crew provider. You know, the Commercial Crew Program not only means more crew members and more cargo, which means more science, but it also really enabled an infrastructure to not only get crew back more quickly, but also our science samples more quickly. So this is really important. This gets the research in the hands of researchers in a matter of hours now, and really opens up what we're able to study. Now we can look at things like readaptation when our science returns from space. So we're very excited about this program and for the launch coming up this week.
Thanks, everyone. You know, you can tell how excited everybody is up here, and we're excited to have you guys here. So we're going to start taking your questions. And what we're going to do is we're going to alternate between some of you guys in the room as well as social media and over the phone. Those on social media, remember, you can still ask questions with hashtag AskNASA or in the Facebook or YouTube chat. And then remember, please keep it to 1 question so that we can get to as many people as possible. All right, so the first one on social media is, are you attempting a land landing, or is this going to be a splashdown? Whoever wants to take that.
I'll start. So this will be a land landing at one of 4 different western United States landing spots. We descend under parachutes initially, and then at the approximately 3,000 feet off the ground, we will jettison our base heat shield, and we inflate what we call landing airbags, which cushion the final impact on ground. It's a great opportunity. We can get to the crew very quickly. We can also extract science payload and get it back to the likes of Jennifer before too long. So again, we're a land lander.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick that Fergie mentioned the part that we look forward to is the cushioned portion of that.
Yeah, we didn't have airbags on the Soyuz.
No, we did not. So landing on water, obviously the water gives. Land does not give so much. So the cushion part, that'll be cool.
Yo, airbags.
Perfect. One from the room here.
Hi, Derek Wise with Space Explored. So obviously the delay with the original OFT wasn't ideal, but how does having this second orbital flight test raise your confidence in the crew flight test?
All right. So all of us here, Chris included, are flight testers from our various services before we became astronauts. This is how we do it. We stepwise build, and if something doesn't work right, we fix it and go fly it again. And this is exactly what Boeing decided to do. They're going to get it right this time, and then we're going to have super confidence for the crew on board for crew flight test. Adding a crew on board actually is a great thing too, because we add an extra element of safety and redundancy. So if for some reason the automation can't handle whatever situation we might find ourselves in, we can hit the manual buttons and go manual and fly the spacecraft all the way up to docking if needed. So it really we're really trying to ensure crew success, mission success here including being able to help out the International Space Station. So this is it's a fantastic spacecraft. I've been on this will be my third one, and I'm just a big fan of Starliner.
Great. And we'll take one from the phone now. This is David Hurley with Discovery.
Thanks very much. Butch just referred to it, but Nicole, Boeing talked about the fact if a crew had been on board on OFT-1, there would not have been the problems because you would have overridden the system. So I'd like a kind of a broad answer about automation and human interaction and interface and where we are with that and what that all means. And Chris, when are you getting back in the rotation?
A great question. And now, if we had been on board, I'm not to say that nothing would have gone wrong. Certainly, we had some challenges. But crew brings a different capability, as Spanky mentioned. And so what you'll see with Starliner is that it's an incredible jump in technology as far as automation goes. It's a very robust spacecraft with a ton of capability. Someday, we're going to get to the point where that spacecraft flies the mission all with the automation and no interaction from crew. We're not quite there yet. So part of our mission as test pilots on board the first experimental test flight of this new spacecraft is to test out those backup systems. So we will turn off the automation. We'll take over manually. We will fly the spacecraft. We will test out that backup system so that for future crews, in the case that they have a problem with the automation, we have confidence that the backup systems will work. So that's all part of the building process and the rigor and tests that we do for spaceflight.
And as for being back in the rotation, primary job number one, let's get these guys up to space station, get them back safely, and then we'll see where things go from there.
Great. And we have a question from Facebook now. So what will the sensors on Rosie the Rocketeer be monitoring in regards to how the flight will affect the astronauts?
Okay, I'll take that one. So on our very first test flight, we did have Rosie well instrumented. We collected the data that we needed. We processed the data, and it was actually very good. Rosie's predominant job on this flight is to be essentially a weight and balance machine. We do not have her instrumented. We will not be getting any instrumentation data off of her. But she is there to essentially maintain a good weight and balance as if a crew member were really there. So she's her job is largely to just enjoy the ride.
Great. Let's take one from the room now.
Amy from space.com. So my question is for any one of you three, if you want to answer. What has your role been in the past 18 months in getting this capsule ready for reflight?
Well, I would say that all of us, like Mike mentioned when we started out, we are flight testers. That's what we trained for back when we were in our various services. And to have the opportunity to take place in the first flight of a spacecraft, I mean, none of us would have ever dreamed that we'd be sitting in these positions, none of us. So it's fascinating. And we're in the sim. Obviously, it's a new spacecraft, new systems, new software. You find things here and there that are not working exactly perfectly, and that's what flight test does. We go through those processes, identify the problems, rectify the problems, and move forward. So it's a fascinating, wonderful place to be at this point, and we're just excited that we have the opportunity, obviously.
Okay, we have one question on the phone. This is Jackie Goddard, Times of London.
Yes, hello, thank you. My question is for Chris Ferguson. Firstly, no woman wants to just be called weight and balance in a spacecraft, but poor old Rosie. But initially, you were lined up to fly on the first crewed mission, and then you made that switch. And I wondered what it feels like to be now on the more terrestrial side of preparing for that, whether you find yourself being a little envious and how that has changed the dynamic for you. Thank you very much.
That's a great question. I can tell you that within 2 weeks of launch, I enjoyed wearing one of those flight suits more than one of these. It's a little more hectic, right? You're worried about a lot of the details. And there's a pretty good elevation of, I'll just call it general work hours, in the month and in the weeks leading to flight. But I enjoy that job just as much, and we're very proud of our crew and looking forward to seeing them go fly.
Great. All right, someone else from the room here.
Hey, thank you. Joey Roulette with The Verge. Question for the Starliner astronauts, similar to one that was already asked, but how much more engaged were you this time around in the Starliner preparations than you were before the 2019 test?
I'd like to say that we were engaged then, and we're engaged now, and we'll continue to be engaged for our flight. To be honest, the first OFT and OFT2, the team at Boeing and the mission operations that are happening in Houston, Texas, that team is ready to go. They're operators. They're used to working with automation, and they're used to they totally understand the spacecraft. And then you add what Chris Ferguson and his team bring to the mission management. So if they have to make big decisions in real time, they're ready to go. So we are part of those teams. We've made contributions, and we've been in lots of simulations to help get everybody trained. So the whole team is ready.
Just one more follow-up. How was the end-to-end test? I think you guys participated in that. If you could kind of give just like a general scope of how many more hours you might have put in this time around, or if there's any kind of major difference. Thanks.
Yeah, Chris can add, because this was definitely a Boeing event. But from what we as a crew saw, the end-to-end test was great. The software, we started running it hours before launch, kind of where we are now, and all the way through landing. And that included docking to the International Space Station. There were a few pre-planned malfunctions to make sure that the fault detection and isolation software would work, and it was super smooth. And that's how we want our software to work.
And Chris, this is probably a question for you from Twitter. Does Starliner support automatic docking to the ISS, or the astronauts have to operate that manually?
It fully supports automated docking. That said, the astronauts can take over at any time. And also using the onboard, what we call relative navigation system, dock as well. So we can work it either way.
Okay, we'll do one from the phone, and then we'll head to a couple people here in the room. So we have Paul Brinkman with United Press International.
Hi, yeah, thanks for taking my question. I don't know about any of you, but as a journalist, I'm sort of having a sense of deja vu, because there was a lot of confidence and excitement, before the last test flight in 2019. So I'm just wondering if any of you are feeling that, I guess for Nicole or Chris, and specifically any of the lessons learned from that investigation of that mishap. Were those applied at all to these readiness reviews, or is that all just like ancient history, I guess? Thanks.
Well, it's certainly not ancient history. I think many of you are aware there was an independent review team that was assembled after the first OFT flight. They came out with 80 recommendations that they recommended that we implement. A significantly less portion, I think it was about 25% of them, were considered mandatory. Boeing went and we fixed everyone. We addressed everyone. We want this next flight to be as we'll call it, incident-free, as clean as it can possibly be. There was some indication made about an end-to-end test. We called it the ASIL mission rehearsal, AMR. It ran from launch minus 30 hours all the way through touchdown plus a couple hours. It was a 100-hour plus simulation, something we had never done. And what that did is it stitched together every element of the mission that we had previously tested thoroughly but independently, and gave us an opportunity to see really how the vehicle performs over the full duration of an entire mission. So we have really, I'll call it thoroughly dug into, tested, and verified hundreds of times, the independent, the software code to ensure that it performs exactly the way we intend on OFT2.
We'll take two questions from the room here.
Thank you. Sawyer Rosenstein with Talking Space. Chris, you talked earlier about all of the different changes that have been made to the Starliner capsule. So I guess which system from the ground are you in particular looking to see the most from? And for the crew, which systems will you guys be really trying to focus on during this test flight ahead of your eventual flights?
So I'll keep it real short. One thing I'm very interested in, I think most of you are aware we're flying with a fully up abort capable system this time. We had mass simulators for the portion of the abort system for OFT1. Interested in see, of course, we never plan to use the abort system. However, we will be able to monitor its performance and ensure that, we don't see anything unexpected. And then, sort of, to me, we also have an entry cover. We're, a way to protect the docking mechanism for the heat of reentry. This will be the first time that we're using an entry cover. Entry cover has to be opened once we get on orbit and then closed prior to landing. So those are the two biggies for me.
Okay, perfect. And another, oh, I'm so sorry.
I think from a crew perspective, the second part of that question is we'll be really focused on the portion of the mission that we did not get a chance to accomplish on OFT. So specifically, that's the rendezvous and docking. We'll be looking at the relative navigation system. VESTA is a series of cameras that provides us that capability. So we're excited to see from the crew displays what's that actually going to look like, vice to just what we have in the simulators. Of course, docking and then undocking are the other major components of this test that we'll specifically be watching.
Go ahead.
Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thanks. Good luck on the mission. For the crew, we were here a couple of weeks ago and you arrived with the booster. I'm wondering if you got any more clarity on how long your mission might be, a couple of days, couple of months. You didn't have too much clarity on that. And how much science are you doing to carry out experiments on the ISS if it might be a longer mission?
Well, I can tell you that we are completely fully trained to do a full mission 6 months or longer, as long as the spacecraft, I think the spacecraft's ready for like 220 days. Attached to the space station. So we're fully trained and ready to go and do that. But our focus is obviously very broad, but our detailed focus is on this flight. This is an experimental test flight, and that's what our focus is. And if it's 8 days or 8 months, whatever it winds up being, that's what we're going to what we are prepared to do and accomplish. So flight test, the objectives that we have set in front of us are the key for this. And honestly, wherever we fit in is where we'll go. It depends on the needs of the space station as far as duration of the mission. So if the space station needs us for a couple months, that's what it'll be. If it needs us for 6 months, that's what it'll be. If it really doesn't need us at the time, but it's a good window to go to the space station, and it just becomes a test flight, that'll be fine with us.
But that includes the science. We fully support Jennifer and her team on the science program. We're trained up in all the science programs goes. And as we get closer to our launch date and we know exactly what experiments are going to be the focus, we'll get the extra training. Again, not to interfere with our flight tests like Butch said, but we're definitely a science crew.
And just to comment on a standard crew expedition, we do anywhere up to about 300 experiments per 6 months.
This question's from social. It's from an 11-year-old from North Carolina. He wants to know how long the training process is before you launch. Also, what is the fastest speeds you'll experience?
So that training process starts the day you show up at NASA, and it never stops. But it's really exciting. It's some of the coolest training and learning that you'll ever do. Specifically for a mission, training starts about 2 years prior to your launch to train specifically what you'll be doing on that mission, if it's a spacewalk or science, or in our case, an experimental test flight. But that training continues the entire time. Fortunately, coming back home, we're going to reach just over 25 Mach. So that's going to be the fastest I've ever gone. These gentlemen have flown before, but we're looking forward to those speeds.
Yeah, you get a patch if you fly 25 Mach, and you'll see the astronauts traditionally have them, those who've flown. I think, Butch, you're wearing your shuttle one. I'm wearing my Soyuz one, and we have a new patch that has a Starliner on it, but we're not allowed to wear it till we go Mach 25. I'm looking forward to watching Duke go Mach 25 for the first time.
I've got a spot for it on my flight suit, so I'm ready.
All right, we have one more on social, and then I do see we have 2 or 3 in the room here. So the one on social is, how will Starliner contribute to the future of space exploration and continue the excitement of space among our youth?
Nicole, you've got a good answer for that.
Well, I think I'll answer from the first part of we talked a little bit about the big mission of how Starliner fits into human exploration, right? This is a huge component to returning this launch capability from the United States and having this sustained dissimilar redundancy between SpaceX and Boeing, and so that we're not reliant on just one company to get astronauts to the International Space Station. And as we look at low Earth orbit, you've seen a lot of commercial launches recently. You're going to see more folks in low Earth orbit that are not NASA astronauts. That's great. This is goodness. I think for the younger generation, they're going to see scientists, engineers, maybe journalists in space, and they're going to be able to capture the amazement of space, and they're going to be able to share these experiences and the things that we learn better so than astronauts are able to do so. And I think for these kids that they are going to see that there's opportunities for them in space in whichever capacity that they would like to participate. And so hopefully they'll realize that a lot of these barriers or maybe limitations from the past are being broken down and the opportunities are there for the taking. It will also increase our science capability quite a bit, which I think Jennifer would probably be best suited to touch on.
Absolutely. So again, we talked earlier, we having more crew on orbit and more cargo back and forth to ISS means we can do more science. We really do a wide variety of science. So we do experiments in everything from human research to fluid physics, to technology demonstrations, life sciences, as well as education. So that is a component of our mission. And so students have been very successful in student-involved experiments on ISS to date, and I look forward to seeing that increase.
Yeah, very bright future for all of us. Okay, one in the room here.
Chris Gephardt with NASA Spaceflight for Chris Ferguson. One of the other things that popped up on OFT was a communications issue, some sort of interference with the communication system. I'm just wondering, what was the ultimate root cause of that investigation and what were the fixes?
Yeah. So there were a couple. One of them had to do with locking on to a bad TDRS frequency. We've got plenty of mitigations in place for that. In fact, for the crewed flight test, we are going to roll on a new, what we call communications transceiver that is a little more robust and resistant to that. But we have mitigation ways to detect if we have what we call a false lock, and we'll break that lock and we'll reacquire. So that's one of them. Another one, we discovered that we were really looking a little too close with our antennas to the Earth's horizon, and therefore we were picking up a lot of interfering frequencies, and those interfering frequencies all fall in the region of cell phones, believe it or not. So we now have actually canted our view of the horizon. We sort of mask out that noisy area. And we've taken other measures. We point ourselves in what we call communications-friendly attitudes to try to make sure that we minimize our exposure to that noise. So I think the biggest thing is for the crewed flight test and subsequents, we're going to roll on a new transceiver which will really permanently put a lot of these issues behind us. But in the interim, we've got a lot of good measures in place to ensure we have good comm throughout the flight.
Great, thank you. And the last question from the room here.
Rachel Nail with Florida Today. This is a little bit of a follow-on on what Nicole just was talking about. Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin just flew, folks on these suborbital space flights. And there's a little bit of a controversy. Should these people be considered astronauts? Should they be called astronauts? I'm very curious what you guys think about these passengers that are on these suborbital space flights, now and in the future.
I can say that we are excited that more people are coming to space. Just to stand on the shoulders of Nicole there, is that only 550 people plus or minus have been to space, and the more people that can see our beautiful planet, see what our eyes have seen, the better it off is for all of humanity. And the more companies that we have is more jobs for everyone, including here on the Space Coast. So this is all goodness, as Nicole said. What we call these people, that's hard to say. We just say that we called Alan Shepard an astronaut when he did his suborbital flight along with Gus on Mercury Redstone. But these people, some folks who go to there are not professional astronauts like it's our profession. So what to call them is a very good question. But we're glad that more people are seeing space.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. This brings us to the end of this briefing. Thank you to everyone who participated and asked questions. Again, a reminder that the launch tomorrow is targeted for 2:53 p.m. Eastern Time. Our launch coverage will begin at 2, so we hope to see you then. Thanks.